Well, my name's Etta. My dad's name is Gordon, and I have 9 brothers and sisters, and we all share the same mom and dad. And we grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and right now I'm just going to school at Brandeis. I found out that my dad had cancer my freshman year at Brandeis, my first semester away, and it was pretty tough because my family was already going through a lot. Like, my mom had left, so like the home, our routine was already really crazy, and my dad was like really sad and going through a lot. And so to find out he had cancer on top of it was really hard. And when he found out he had cancer, it was already like the latest stage and like pretty developed and pretty bad. But yeah, I don't know. I like went home a bunch on the weekends when I went to Brandeis, like before I found out, and then afterwards I like tried to call my dad more often. But the weird thing is, I think that when he got cancer, and when I realized how bad it was, I started distancing myself more physically and kind of just like calling him more. Yeah, so I went back to school and I made it a point to spend this summer. Oh wait, I'm getting a bit confused. Not this summer, the summer before that, I decided not to work at camp anymore, and I decided to go back home for a summer because I thought it might be the last summer I ever had with my dad, and it turns out that it was. But yeah, it was really tough because like my family is really poor, and so like my parents, neither of them have ever held a job just because of mental illnesses and just things like that. And so when my mom left home with another man, like she had all the government papers, and so she like left with food stamps, left with the housing, and so that's kind of why I think everything hit rock bottom. And like there wasn't enough food at home, there wasn't enough money, but my brother Bill, he was really great the whole time. He moved back home and he was a teacher, so like he had a full salary, so he could like pay for everything. So like things weren't as good as they could have been, but they were the best that they could be in the moment. So like maybe my dad wasn't making everyone like full course meals every night, but my brother Bill was there, and like he ordered food, like everything that needed to get done was getting done. And I think it was good that my brother came home because he kind of could be there for my dad in his loneliness, like when all my brothers and sisters went to school, and just kind of like, I don't know, gave my dad a chance to like, you know, connect with his son. Like the last thing my dad said before he died, like he was laying down and my aunt was there, and she's a nurse and she took a lot of care of my dad towards the end of it, but the last thing he said was, "No one messes with my son," talking about Bill, because they were just together the entire time. My brother was there for him, giving him medicine in the proper doses, because if he didn't do that, my dad would have overdosed. Like he definitely overdosed a few times and had to like be sent to the hospital. But yeah, my dad didn't like being at the hospital, and I always felt bad for him knowing that he had to go there, because they would just like, he'd be in this one bed and he missed his kids so much. And he kind of like, my dad's a really friendly, charismatic guy, but I don't think he really believed in himself much his whole life, because he just stayed home a bunch, and like his friends were people you wouldn't expect, like the people on the corner of the street, like the people working at the convenience store around the corner. And so I don't know, he kind of was a bum. Other people might have looked at my dad walking down the street and thought that's a bum, because he didn't really wear clean clothes either. I don't think he did laundry much ever, and he only had like one pair of pants that had cigarette burns in them, and like a t-shirt that he wore every day. Which my dad, like, he's really political. Like his life really just consisted, he didn't go out much, he just sat in his chair in the living room, and he always had a pillow on his lap, and he'd always be like kind of hunched over and smoking a cigarette and just watching MSNBC, watching CNN. And so one of the things that I always like got along with my dad best about was politics, and like liberal politics specifically, and he'd always talk about how he's a diehard Democrat. and like he would call the radio station, the local one, every morning at like 5 a.m. to talk some politics, and like people would like call back and be like, Gordon, and directly respond to him because he sparked a lot of conversations on the radio. He had a lot of fun with that. And the phone was actually attached to the wall in my room. We didn't have a cordless phone, so he'd always wake me up every morning talking on the phone really loud and enthusiastically, and I'd just roll over, but I wouldn't really get mad at him because I didn't really ever get mad at my dad ever. But he'd always call me like his liberal princess because I was going to Brandeis because I felt all social justice-y. And yeah, so the last summer I know that I made him really proud because I was working on a local campaign, and I was the co-campaign manager, and I was door knocking every day and then talking to him about the process. And my dad would always say this thing to me, you're gonna be the governor here in Mass. And he'd give me a fake plan like, you're gonna graduate from Brandeis, you're gonna come back home, volunteer at the library, and you're gonna work your way up through city council and you'll be the governor. So he just like really, I don't know, we had a lot of fun talking about politics. And actually one of the last conversations I ever had with my dad was last year. He just like called me. He calls all of his children a bunch. Literally, I would get phone calls from him like 2 times a day, even before cancer, because he'd just call up and be like, hey, what's up, Yaya? Which is what he calls me. How you doing? All right, you doing good in school? Okay, talk to you later. And then he'd hang up. But he like called me one day and he said that, like, hey, how you doing? Love ya. And then 2 minutes later, I got a phone call from him again, and he was just saying one of the last things, I just want you to know, like, I was thinking about you and all of the work that you do and all the political campaigning you did and how proud I am of you. And so that made me feel really good because it just made him so happy that I was like on the streets working with my candidate. So like, yeah, my dad, like at one point they had to strap him into the bed because he kept just trying to walk out of the hospital, like not wearing clothes, just leave the hospital. And he kept saying, I want to see my kids, I want to go home. And yeah, I don't know, my Aunt Marietta was there with him though. And like eventually they let him go because like they just realized they had to give up. My dad wanted to be home. And at the end of his life, he was at home, and that was really nice for him because even though it was always really loud, me and my brothers and sisters fight a lot, and it really was just like kind of a dingy, dirty place. Like that was where he felt happiest and the most loved, and like he was with us. And the day that he died, it's actually coming up on February 22nd this year. I was on my way home because I like kind of visited home here and there just because I was like, I feel like it's the end and it's hard, but I want to be there even though I'm going to be really sad to see him. But I was on my way home and I was at a friend's house in Worcester, and I didn't tell anyone in my family because I wanted to surprise them. And then I literally was 10 minutes away in the car and I got the phone call that he had died. So yeah, but it's kind of weird how it worked out because I like planned a trip home to Worcester that weekend as a surprise, and I didn't tell anyone. And my sister Steph, who was living in New York, did the same. And so I don't know, it's really weird. Somehow all my brothers and sisters who weren't living at home all felt this like, oh, I want to go home this weekend. And so that day, like everyone was there. Even my sister who was away in college in Vermont, our family friends, the Marcotts, immediately hit the road, and 8 hours later she was home. And so we were all together, and that was really nice for everyone to be there. And it was kind of weird because my dad's body was just like under the blankets on the bed, and like people from the funeral home or whatever like came through at one point and took him away, and it was just really weird. We had a really good relationship with Monsignor at the church, and he's the one who spoke at my dad's funeral, so it just kind of felt like, I don't know, a comfortable place where the person who was talking actually knew my dad, and he shared funnier stories about my dad than I even knew, because like, I don't know, I was at college for like the end of his life, but my dad, he's just crazy. Sometimes he'd leave the house with no shoes on and just walk up the street smoking a cigarette and just, I don't know. But Monsignor told really funny stories. And I guess like the aftermath though, so we had his funeral, everyone was there, and it was weirdly, everyone was laughing. I was definitely laughing because my dad was really funny, and we were all just sharing really funny stories. Like Kim, Bill, and Steph are the 3 oldest, and they each wrote something down for my dad. My brother Bill didn't. He just spoke from his head, but he's an English major and he loves writing, and it was really beautiful anyway. And so it kind of was just like weirdly nice to be celebrating him in that way. But then like, I don't know, it just like still felt unreal and weird. And I took time away from school just because like it felt like his death was just one thing on top of all the stress in my family and like things that we were going through. And so then I just thought, like, when he died, what's the point? I'm so stressed, I need time for myself. And I started working at a cafe in Cambridge in the Porter Square bookstore, and like that was really good because I left like college, like I had a lot of friends there, but like here at the cafe there were a bunch of young people, so I felt really weird. I felt like I kind of wasn't a fun person to be around, and I started to get really self-conscious and a lot of anxiety even before my father passed away, of like, I'm just not a fun person to talk to, like I just like take up weird space in this environment. But it's so weird, like there were days where I hit rock bottom and like couldn't get up from the couch, but I would always like just like force myself out. So I remember one day, it was like probably maybe the worst day of my life. I just like stayed in bed all day and I couldn't even watch a movie because I was spacing out. But then I took a walk, and I just started to do that every time I started to feel so alone. I would just go on a walk. And then I decided that I wanted to buy a journal because I worked at that cafe/bookstore and they're like really cute journals. So I bought a journal, and then I just started to write without any intention, just write things down. And I think that's when I really started to get better, because I like remember writing a letter to my dad telling him like I wish he didn't go, because I was like feeling really terrible and I wasn't at school, and my dad, like, he couldn't really provide much for us, but he did give us everything we needed, because he always just told us, get good grades in school, do well, and he was always really supportive about school. So part of me felt disappointed in myself for leaving school because I knew he wanted me to just finish, but I also knew that I would go back to school, that I just needed a break. But there was one day where I just wrote him a letter telling him, like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing well, I'm not doing as well as you want me to at all, and I miss you. But then, I don't know, writing about it kind of made me want to start trying to do better again. And then, I don't know, just step by step, I started doing things like taking care of myself, going on walks, making food, like just baby steps, and like calling my brothers and sisters, checking in on the family, and then also like having fun, going out with friends. And then little by little, like during my time off, I started to feel better. And then I kind of just like one day was sitting with my friend Grace in Davis Square, and I like was feeling pretty emotional. I tend to just cry a lot. Like I think that I'm haunted by onions is how I think of it. But I was just sitting with her, and I just started to feel okay for once about my dad being gone, because I don't know, there's always something bad going on, but for every bad thing that's happened that my family has gone through, something good has come out of it, because I'm still here where I am right now. And I just like, I wrote my dad a letter like telling him how everything was okay, because I took time, I took care of myself, and I am doing as well as he wants me to. So I think that helped me a lot, writing him letters in my journal. And yeah, like I started having a lot of panic attacks too, but I started trying to have my dad's voice talk to me out of those. So yeah, like I think right after he died, I kind of felt numb, but then when I started trying to like talk to him again is when I really started to feel better, and I started to feel like I could handle it. Yeah, people were always telling me, like, I have this amazing teacher in high school, Fife, the one who I would talk politics with. She was always telling me, just write. And she gave me a journal because she knew how much I was dealing with at home, even in high school. And I always wanted to write down, but every time that I wrote something down on paper, I'd crumple it up because it just felt like the worst thing in the world. I think I used to like just keeping things in my head where they're safe and no one can touch them. But writing things down, I like have a very straightforward, almost childish way of writing in my journal. I like look back on it and it sounds like a 7-year-old speaking, but the concepts that I get to and the things that I work through are really helpful. And so it's like very simplistic writing of like really big things that help me. Well, I think that something I used to do a lot in the past is close friends out. Or like, so at Brandeis, my first 2 years, like, there were some people I hung out with and I did feel like I had friends, but ultimately I just felt very alone and I would isolate myself a lot. And so I would visit home a lot too, but I think that was kind of a turning point for me because I like would say that was the time in my life where I felt more alone than ever, and I actually felt like the physical health effects of feeling alone, like crushing headaches and all these things. But then, I don't know, there was a lot that I had to get through to be able to go back to Brandeis the next semester, but I don't know, like, my friend Grace, I think like she helped me more than anyone. Just because we were friends since high school and we had a lot of drama in high school and we go to the same college and we had a lot of drama at first too. But when my dad passed away, she reached out to me and I hadn't been talking to her for a while. And then because of that, we started talking and then I started to feel like really close to her again. And like, I think like that's when I finally just stopped like isolating myself from her when I would feel bad or that I was going through too much, and like I felt like she was really there for me emotionally. And so I don't know, like even though like I was feeling really alone, like Grace being my friend again, like I felt like, I don't know, really connected to someone who really knew me. Like she knew my dad and that felt really comforting, and her family and my family know each other really well. And so that summer we spent so much time together. I spent so much time at her apartment in Waltham, like sometimes like just hanging out to read a book. But I don't know, like when I went back to Brandeis, I don't know like if it feels normal. It definitely, my life is different, but I'm kind of like happier because I just like, I felt this new desire to make friends. And so like I was really sad about it, but maybe something about it like kind of inspired me to just like, I don't know, make friends and have fun and like, I don't know, hang out with people who actually make me feel validated and who have things in common with me. Yeah, because I think him leaving, it almost felt like why did it have to happen this way? Because my dad was really the parent who like I looked for hope. Like things weren't good at my house, but like my dad always made me feel good because he was so loving, and like even if we didn't have food or we like the hot water was turned off, like I just always felt loved by my dad and I always felt like things would be okay. So kind of, I think when he passed away, I truly felt what rock bottom felt like. And I honestly wanted to be committed to a mental institution. I was just like, I don't want to take care of myself. Just put me in a mental institution where I can lay in bed and someone gives me food 3 times a day. And then I started to like really think about that, and I realized I just wanted someone to take care of me because my dad left and he took care of me. But I think like feeling like all that pain kind of made me realize that I could take care of myself. And there was one day, my sister Melissa, she's 1 year younger than me, and I called her up and I couldn't really speak. I was just crying, and I said, I haven't been going running. I have not been eating well. I like feel terrible. And she was in Worcester and she borrowed the Marcotte's car, the ones who picked her up from Middlebury, and she drove. Within an hour she picked me up and we went home, and she made me dinner that night. She's younger than me, but she's always taken care of me. And then she the next day was like, let's go running. And I was like, no, I can't. Physically, I can't do anything. And then she was like, no, we're going running. And I think that also too kind of started to get me back on my feet, literally. So I went running with her. We ran 5 miles, like very leisurely, and I started to feel really good after that. So then I think that I just started to get into this mindset that you can have a good life in a bad world, and the things that make up a day are the little things you do to take care of yourself. So I just started trying really hard to do that, like take care of my physical needs, my emotional needs, and social needs. And I don't know, I kind of feel like I can take care of myself now. Like I don't need parents. Like I'd like to be able to call my dad and say hey and like tell him about my day. And like when he first passed away, I would accidentally almost call home, which is his number, because I was so used to calling him after class and being like, this is what I learned about, I want to tell you, because he'd always get so excited and just be like, good kid, get straight A's, and I'd just be like, yeah. And so I don't know, but I started to feel like I didn't need anyone but me and my friends, and like, I don't know, that's ultimately been really helpful for me, to feel like I could take care of myself, and that it really just, it's the little things that you have to do, and like after a while they don't feel so hard. Like it used to feel really challenging laying in bed and being like, I have to get up and make coffee and a bagel, but now it's just like, those are obvious, those are easy. And something's been happening to me lately, and I think it's because I'm happy at Brandeis for the first time, and like I love my friends so much now. I feel really like supported and just appreciated. And like when I moved out of my house, my mom actually kicked me out when I was 18, and then when she left, my dad was like, come back home, so that was fine. But like there was a lot of drama. But I think when I was 18 is when I started to only be able to see the bad things in the world, and I started to feel very cynical, and I couldn't remember like happy childhood memories. There'd be this string of memories that would kind of just haunt me, and I could ruminate for literally ever, like just ruminate on end. But like recently I've been having memories, and there's nothing really tangible. They're just kind of images of times that I was happy as a kid, and that's been really good for me too. And like I haven't been talking to my dad as much in my head lately, but I have been connecting to a happier version of myself, which has been nice. Like, I don't know, just like sunny days in the backyard with my brothers and sisters when I'm 8, or just like days when I'm younger and my aunt and cousins came over to visit and there's a bunch of pizza. And so, I don't know, like, I've actually been starting to look back and see the happier moments in my life, instead of feeling like I'm just like this doomed human with like surrounded by sadness and turmoil. So that's been really nice too. I always thought of myself as being a lot like my dad. Like my mom would always say it as an insult, you're just like your father. And people always tell me I look a lot like my dad, and that always made me feel really good. And he would say this to every single one of us. Sometimes when others were around, you're my favorite kid. And he'd just say that to everyone, and he'd come home with groceries, and he'd just like pull out ice cream, and he'd be like, yeah, I got this ice cream for you. And it'd be like Neapolitan, and I don't like ice cream that much. But he would make everyone feel special. He'd pull out Reese's Puffs and be like, Steph, I got these for you, they're your favorite. And we'd all kind of just like lie and be like, yeah, because ultimately my dad just made us laugh. And I like to think that I have that quality of my dad with me. And he was also so nice, like, to anyone. And he wasn't a snob at all. He was just so kind, and I don't know, people weren't always nice to my dad, but he could light up a room. Like, me and my brothers and sisters, we could all be feeling like really angsty and terrible, and my dad just had a way of making us all laugh and making everything feel better. And I don't know, like, one thing that a good memory I have of my dad is that, like, even though we didn't have a lot of food, he was so nice and so friendly. Like, with the guy around the corner, or at the store around the corner from us, he like became friends with him. And sometimes my dad would be like, go get milk, and I'd get milk, and then Jerry would be like, oh, like, Marietta, hey, like, how's school, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, how do you know me? And he's like, your dad comes in here every day and talks about you kids all the time. And so that was really nice. And actually my dad, he ran up a credit tab with Jerry of like all the food he was like getting for us but not paying back. But Jerry, like, I don't think my dad ever managed to pay Jerry back. and Jerry ultimately sold his store, but like he just kept letting my dad get cereal, get toilet paper, get shampoo, soap, all these things. And I think it's because he genuinely loved my father because he was so nice. So my dad, even though he was kind of a bum, like sometimes he would be sitting on the corner asking people for money or cigarettes, he was so nice to everyone that you couldn't help but love him. I don't know, there's one way that I do think of my dad, and well, I just don't think he really ever loved himself, which is why I'm so surprised he like could make all my brothers and sisters feel loved, because there really wasn't one day that I ever questioned that my dad loved me. But I don't know, he had a limited heart, I think, in a lot of ways, and there would be some nights where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd walk down the hall and my dad, because he always slept in the living room, like he would just be sobbing in his hands and like saying things like I'm a loser, and that always broke my heart. But I honestly think that even though his heart was limited, he used it to its full potential, and he loved us more than anyone in the world could love us, even if it wasn't, maybe didn't compare to someone who could like give you food all the time or like do your clothes, but he loved us so much. And it's really cheesy, but I just think of this like story from the Bible that I learned when I was younger about like the man who walks into an offering and gives $100, but he's like super rich and it's not a big deal for him. And then like the old woman who walks in with a penny and just gives everything she has. And that, like, I always think of my dad that way, because like, I don't know, he just did his best, and like odds were stacked against him, but somehow like, and odds you could say were stacked against me and my brothers and sisters, but because we had him as a father, we could break the cycle. One of the like things that I've been doing more of recently is I used to get really guilty when I would feel bad or cry or not be perfect, but I don't know, I spend a lot of time now just being kind of like dead in a way. No, that was an extreme word, but just like laying in bed, kind of just like watching Netflix and like feeling like pretty crappy, but there's no guilt attached to it anymore, because I'm just like, I need to do this, and like I'll probably feel really good tomorrow, or like even later today I'll probably feel a 180. So I kind of just been letting myself go through like really intense emotional shifts, but kind of just like reminding myself that these things come and go, and that I just have to feel what I feel, accept that, because it's telling me that I need to do something. I don't know, one thing that I think about is, one thing that I was telling myself before he died, I was kind of, it felt almost like he was already dead, or I was convincing myself of that, and I was just telling myself, he can never be dead, it's just his physical body's gonna be gone. And I think about that a lot, of how like energy can neither be created nor destroyed, and just like, I don't know, like the life of a human, there's a physical component and there's something else. And I'm not religious at all, but sometimes it comforts me to think that, well, he can't be created or destroyed, something about him, and so there's something somewhere, and I just like feel like it's really important to keep in touch with him however I need him. Like, I don't know, maybe his spirit's floating somewhere in this world, but like I'm still here in my physical form, and so I just like, I don't know, I keep in touch with him however I need to, because like, I guess like, I don't know, I just have to take care of myself. It makes me a better sister, it makes me a better friend, and a more enjoyable person to be around. And I just like, every once in a while, I feel like a special spot in my heart for my dad.